Thank you to you all for joining me. I know you guys are all really busy. I appreciate you carving out some time to learn more about Spirit Bear Lodge. My name is Tim McGrady, and I'm the General Manager at Spirit Bear Lodge. And I believe you should be looking at a picture of myself, my wife, and my two boys standing on the deck in front of the lodge. That was taken last year. And so behind me there is Spirit Bear Lodge, and we're located in a little First Nations village on the west coast in the Great Bear Rainforest in a little village called Klemtu. And there you can see the lodge is 12 rooms, all ocean view, 3 up and 3 down on each of those wings. And then that great room in the middle, as we call it, is our social space where we have meals, and we have a lounge there on the left-hand side of that of those picture windows. So all fantastic views, private ensuite bathrooms. The views overlook Klemtu Pass, and it's quite a narrow pass between us and a small island in front of Klemtu. And so I'm just going to show you a map, and just going to click through there. And this is a map of the southwest corner of British Columbia. It may take a moment for it to pop up on your screen there, but the map should show a red pin up in the corner, and that is the location for Klemtu. And it's just below the second largest island off the coast of British Columbia. So you see the big island in the bottom of the map, and that's Vancouver Island, of course. And Princess Royal Island, which is just north of that pin, Klemtu, is actually the second biggest island after Vancouver Island off the coast of British Columbia. And it's a very special island because it's the home of one of the rarest animals on the planet called the spirit bear, hence the name of our lodge. And this little village of Klemtu is right smack dab in the middle of spirit bear habitat. And the business is 100% First Nations owned. It's owned by the Kitasoo Nation. And there's about 450 of them living in here in Klemtu, and they're very proud of the success of their business. And so our packages all originate in Vancouver, down there on the lower right of your screen, and it's approximately a 2-hour flight from Vancouver to another little fishing village called Bella Bella, which is just below that red pin. And the flight lands there, and then we send a boat down, a water taxi boat, to pick them up and take them into Klemtu. Now, there is a air service that does go from Bella Bella to Klemtu, but it's a float plane, and those float planes are very unreliable, especially this time of year. We're shrouded in fog right now, and so those planes aren't flying, but our boats are still moving up and down, picking people up from Bella Bella, so we haven't missed a beat. And that's why we do that. So that's a little bit of our logistics. You can see Port Hardy there on the north end of Vancouver Island, and that is another waypoint. The flight actually sometimes does stop in Port Hardy, and so people who are on Vancouver Island can pick up that flight in Port Hardy up to Bella Bella. But we don't recommend it because of the amount of fog, which often envelops Port Hardy, making it difficult for that flight to land in Port Hardy sometimes. So that's a little bit about the map and the territory. And I've just changed the photo now. It might take a few moments, but this is a spirit bear. And the spirit bear, as I mentioned, is one of the rarest animals on the planet. It is actually a black bear, so genetically it's identical to a black bear, except for one piece of genetic code in its DNA, which gives it a white fur. So it's not an albino. It has regular pigmentation in its nose and its eyes and its skin. It's only its fur that's white. And we think that there are possibly less than 100 of these animals left on the planet, and they're only found around Klemtu, a little bit into Terrace, a little bit inland, but generally just on this piece of coastline around Klemtu. And so it makes for, you know, a bucket list kind of thing for many of our guests who really want to come and see this really special animal. And so here you can see a photo of a black bear, and so they're genetically identical to this animal. And the Kitasoo have a legend that says that the Creator created 1 in every 10 black bears white to remind them of a time when the earth was covered in ice and snow, and to be thankful for the bounty of the earth. And scientists have a different conception. They believe that it was essentially a random mutation that created this white fur. And then for this random mutation to persist over time, there would have to be a good reason for it to allow it to persist, to give it some advantage to this bear, this white-coated black bear. And in fact, science has shown that when the white bear is fishing with its paws in a whitewater river, the salmon don't deviate from its paws, so it becomes a little bit easier for it to catch salmon than a black bear. And so kind of some interesting biology there in terms of why this random mutation has persisted over time. And what's really pretty fascinating sometimes is we can often get a white mom with a black cub, or a black mom with a white cub, or in fact sometimes a white mom with a black cub and a white cub. So you can get this real mixture, and it can be pretty special. So on your screen you should be seeing a white mom who was scared, not by our group actually, but by another black bear that had wandered in, probably a big male black bear. And so she treated her 2 little black cubs, and you can see one of them in behind one of the branches there. What's quite interesting about these bears is that their behavior seems to be different than black bears. And we don't know why, but you know, my best guess as somebody who's watched these animals for the last 10 years is that they're a little bit like the kid in the schoolyard who's been picked on by the school bully. You know, they get quite shy and protective, and so in fact that's sometimes often what we'll see with black bears who are fishing in the same river as a spirit bear. They'll push out the white bear and not let it fish, and so the white bear will stand by the river and wait for its moment when the black bears have gotten their fish and moved into the forest, and then it'll dash into the river and grab its fish and then retreat into the forest to feed. And so it's perhaps just a cultural thing that's learned, that it's different, and it has to behave as a different creature. One of the nice things about it is that because it's somewhat more shy, well, the challenging thing is because it's shy, it makes it very difficult to see beyond the fact that it's so incredibly rare. But when we do see it, we often develop relationships with this animal in a way that we don't with others, in the sense that it does tend to enjoy hanging around with us. And so, for example, right now we've got a white bear in one river that's been with us for the last month, almost every day. And when we arrive, it pops out and it fishes for a while, and then it'll go back into the forest. And so we really sense that it's developed a bond with us. And in fact, the one that we're watching now was orphaned 2 years ago. Its mother died, and it left. It was on its own without having learned to fish. So we were quite worried that it wouldn't survive, but it did survive. And we've had some extraordinary encounters with this bear. We really seem like all of our staff really feel like they have a relationship with this animal, and that it trusts us and knows who we are. And that's pretty special with an animal like this. What's interesting is that this bear it's snow white, but it can also develop some orange tinges to it, and that's a chemical that it ingests when it's feeding on salmon and other vegetation, which have a chemical called tannic acid in it, which is similar to what's in tea. And so this tannic acid actually can paint its fur a little bit orange, and often the older a bear is, you can tell that the age of the bear often by the amount of orange that it has on the nape of its neck and underneath its chin. So here you can see that orange coloration around its ears, and you can tell by the size of this bear that it's an older spirit bear. So yeah, this is a little white cub. Should be popping up on your screen in a moment. And last year we were really fortunate to have a white mom and a white cub, which is pretty rare for us to see. And again, we would go into the river, and the mom would come out almost as if she was trying to teach her cub that we were okay and we weren't to be feared. But she would bring her cub out right into the river in front of us and fish for an hour or two. Sometimes she would almost have us babysit, and by that I mean she would park her cub on the shore, maybe 40 or 50 feet away from us, and go into the river to fish. And the cub would be yelling at its mom, sort of whining, and she would just ignore it and fish, and every so often bring her cub some fish. And we kind of felt like she was entrusting us with this cub. It was a pretty neat experience. So I'm just going to flash through a couple of slides of the spirit bear. So here we have a black mom and a little white cub. So yeah, I'm just gonna scroll through a few shots, and now I'll just move on to the grizzly bear. So Spirit Bear Lodge is known as a bear viewing lodge, and we offer package tours from 3 to 6 nights, and they're all packaged out of Vancouver, out of YVR's South Terminal. And people fly, as I mentioned, from us right to Bella Bella, this little First Nations village just south of us, and then we go down by water taxi, pick them up, and bring them back up to Klemtu. And we have 5 vessels that go out daily into this vast territory of the Great Bear Rainforest on the central coast of British Columbia. And we look for wildlife, anything. Yesterday I was out in one of our key grizzly bear viewing areas, looking at bears like this. It should be on your screen now, a grizzly bear. And I happened to see a wolf. And it's very rare to see a wolf, but it was an amazing encounter. This wolf came down and checked us out and looked at us and fished in the river for a little while. And then on the way back, we saw 3 humpback whales bubble net feeding. And so that's a very typical day for us. So, it's this sense of anything can happen wildlife-wise, and every day brings some new adventure, some new encounter, special encounter that we have, whether it's with orca, with humpback whales, with wolves, with bears, and it's really extraordinary. And with 5 vessels that leave the lodge every day, the evenings are really a fun time for guests to come back to the lodge at 6 o'clock. Have a shower, come down for appetizers and a beer or a wine, and share their adventures. And it's a really enjoyable evening sort of time for myself and our staff just to hear about everybody's experiences. So really that's what we're about, is we're about getting into the very heart of the Great Bear Rainforest and experiencing the wonders of this place, the magic of the wildlife, both on land and in the sea. I'll give you another story. 2 days ago, I was up heading north to one of our bear viewing areas, the very top of Tolmi Channel on the Inside Passage, and we saw a pod of Dall's porpoises, and they were fishing. And as the boat approached, the Dall's porpoises started to surf our bow wake on our boat, and so we got the guests up onto the bow, and the Dall's porpoises were surfing the pressure wave right in the front of the boat. And so our guests were getting spray right out of their blowhole on their faces and their clothes, and they were just loving it. And we could have almost reached down and touched these Dall porpoises. And so it was really, really amazing. One of the guests had tears in their eyes. So you get these really extraordinary encounters. They're not always that amazing and that close, but it's certainly not infrequent. So yeah, I'm just flashing through a bunch of photos of grizz. We have one of the healthiest grizzly bear populations in North America. And just like with spirit bears, we often will develop relationships with these animals because we do our bear viewing in such a way that we're very consistent. We go to the same places at the same times, stand in the same areas. The bears know what to expect from us. And when the bears know what to expect from us, they treat us as part of the scenery. And they just kind of ignore us and carry on with what they normally do, which is feeding. Either it's in big fields of sedge grass, like you should be seeing on your screen now, which they do in the spring, or feeding on the salmon in the river in the fall right now, which they're doing. And so you know, we're very mindful of this relationship that we have with the animals and very respectful. But it does allow us to have this relationship. So another story, we've got two bears in one of our grizzly bear viewing estuaries, much like these two bears here. And these are two bears that are just under 4 years old. They left their mother this spring, or rather their mother left them, which is typical. At 3.5, the mother leaves the cubs on their own. And so these two bears, normally cubs at that age will separate themselves after mom leaves and go on their own. But these two bears, we think they're two brothers, developed a really strong bond with each other, and they've been hanging together. And we call them the wrestling brothers because every time we go, they will be wrestling. They'll be wrestling for sometimes up to an hour and a half, just like you can imagine two sort of 6 or 7 year old kids rolling around on a mat, and they're just cuffing each other and playfully biting each other, and it's really, really fun to watch. Much like we see these two playing in the river together. So again, I'm just gonna flash through a couple of photos of grizz. This is a mom and two cubs. These are cub of year, and so this would probably have been a springtime shot, probably in June. And these cubs would have been born in December or January, and would have been fresh out of the den, maybe a couple of months out of the den, and very, very small, as you can see. And mom is obviously very, very protective of them. But we do tend to get some of our best cub viewing in the spring, in June, when the mothers are in the margins of the estuaries where they feed, and they kind of keep their distance from the big male bears that are further up the river. And so just in terms of the seasonality, we open June 1st, and we're open until October 10th. And our June and July months is our low season. We'll still see bears, and what you hopefully should be seeing on your screen now is a grizzly bear feeding on sedge grass, which is what they're doing in June and July. There's a lot of protein in the tips of this vegetation, which gives them a bit of sustenance after their long winter sleep. And so they're feeding in the sedge. We don't see lots and lots of bears, but the ones we do are very docile and very relaxed. The weather is nice, and so we'll be standing in fields of sedge watching them. And sometimes we'll get the mums with cubs. And these are mums that have grown up around us for the last 10 or 15 years and are very comfortable and often introducing their cubs to us. And we very much do feel like that's what's going on. The mums will sometimes approach us and almost to show their cubs that we're okay. And so we'll watch them in the sedge fields until late July, when the salmon start to spawn, and then the bears start to switch over to spending more time around the river mouths, feeding and looking for salmon that are spawning in the rivers. And so our numbers of bears starts to climb as we move into August and September, and we'll view the bears right up until mid-October. And we have very nice weather typically until early September when the rains start to come. And it's raining very heavily right now. But we're appreciative of the rain because the rain creates the kind of environment that's conducive for the salmon to come back up the river and spawn. So we don't begrudge the rain; it's all here. And we provide rain gear and boots to all of our guests, so they can stand on a river underneath a tarp, warm and somewhat dry, and watch bears and watch them catching salmon, like this bear who's grabbed a big chum salmon out of the river and will wander back into the forest and chew on it for a while. So that's a little bit of our season. So the low season, June and July, still seeing bears, but not the same kind of numbers. And then the numbers start to climb in August, which is our shoulder season, and then we hit our high season at the end of August. And we can see spirit bears at any time between August, basically August 1st and the end of our season. We don't tend to see them in June and July. We don't know where they go. We're doing some research right now, but they are a mystery still. So we have to wait till the beginning of August to start seeing the spirit bears again. And then we'll see them right through till the end of our season. But spirit bears are much more tricky they're much more difficult to find. And whereas 99.99% of all our guests will see grizzly bears, and often many grizzly bears, we would estimate that only approximately 50% of our guests will see the spirit bear. So we try and be very clear with our guests that it is an extremely rare animal. And just going to flash through a few more shots. So this is a raven, and I put this on the screen partly because it's a beautiful bird, but also because the raven is a very important animal in the First Nations mythology. They believe that the raven was the creator, and there's some great creation stories of how raven dropped the first people into one of the rivers here, and so he's very, very important animal in their panthos. So we've also got, as I mentioned, we've got great marine mammal activity. So this is a humpback whale that's just getting ready to dive. And the humpbacks are semi-resident here, and they spend the summer and fall here before they head to Hawaii to calve. And they love the very rich waters here, full of herring and other small fish that they feed on. And they do bubble net feeding, which is where they circle a school of fish and come up through the middle with their mouth open. And so you can imagine 40 tons of animal coming straight out of the water in front of a boat. It'd be pretty dramatic and pretty exciting. And we're seeing them almost every day in numbers. So it's pretty spectacular. We also have orca, and they're fairly rare, but we do see them. So I'm just cognizant of the time here, and so I'm just gonna flash through a couple of other shots here. We are, as I mentioned, First Nations owned and operated, so we do have a cultural component to our tours. And typically that will happen in the evenings. We'll walk to our traditional big house and have a cultural performance with one of the youth groups that we work with. We have a cultural youth group that does some traditional singing and dancing and storytelling, and that's really exciting for our guests to be a part of that and experience that. And often people come to see bears and whales and other wildlife, but they go away with a real renewed appreciation for the First Nations people, the Aboriginal people, Indigenous people who've lived here for thousands of years, literally. This area was glaciated 14,000 years ago, and they've been here. There was some archaeological evidence recently found, in fact, last year, that showed they've been here for at least the last 13,000 years. So pretty dramatic history, and they're very proud of their territory and the bears and the wildlife. So I've got some more slides here, but I know there's probably some questions, and so I'll pass it back to Charlie. Maybe I'll just keep scrolling through the slides, and perhaps we could open up if anyone has any questions.
Thanks, Tim. Just so absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much. So, guys, we will open the floor for questions, and Tim can keep scrolling through those beautiful slides. So do type your questions in. Tim, I'm just wondering if you could sort of talk us through a typical day as a guest at the lodge.
Yeah, sure. So you should be seeing a picture of the lodge on the screen right now with 2 of our boats at the dock. And so as I mentioned, we have 5 boats that go out every day. And so our guests will come down for breakfast, 7 to 7:45, buffet breakfast. Then they get suited up with rain gear and boots and life jackets that we provide. They'll pack themselves a lunch. We provide all the sandwiches and granola bars and snacks and things like that. They'll put them in their bag, and then they'll walk down this ramp onto the boat, and the boats depart the lodge every morning at 8 a.m. And we have boats traveling to all different parts of the traditional territory in search of bears and wildlife. And we have a plan each day, a destination, and so they will head down to the dock and find the boat that they're designated, and then they'll head off for the day. And it's about 90 minutes one way to any of our viewing areas, and they'll arrive there about 9:30, and then they'll get off onto the little Zodiac. You can see one of the boats has a little red and gray Zodiac on its roof, so we'll get off on the Zodiac and travel up the river into the estuary, into the viewing area, get off the Zodiac, and walk on land. We don't have any viewing stands or blinds. It's all, in the estuary with the animals. And so we'll find a spot under a tree or next to the river, and we'll sit quietly and wait and watch and see what happens. And very often, we're rewarded pretty spectacularly with some pretty amazing encounters. And then we're there. We might be in one river for half the day and then move to another system for half the day. Or if the viewing is really good, we'll stay for the whole day, and then we usually leave the viewing areas around 4 o'clock, and that has us back to the lodge around 6. And then we'll have appetizers and cocktails, and then dinner at 7. Every evening we have an evening presentation, a slideshow or something, a talk by one of the guides, and then the manager comes around and talks to them about the plan for the next day. And then by that point, they're bushed, they're ready for bed, and so sometimes they'll sit up over a glass of wine and swap stories or adventures, and then get up and do it again. So it's they're full days, but very adventurous and all very active.
That's fantastic. Thank you. So how many guests and rooms do you have at the lodge?
We have 12 rooms. We have 12 rooms, all with king beds, and I just showed a slide there with 2 twins. Actually, our king beds are specially designed that we can pull them apart to have twins, but most times they're configured as kings. So we can have up to 24 guests at once in double occupancy, and so with 5 boats, we have anywhere between 6 and 10 people per boat. Going out into the different systems each day. And I will say, a lot of people say, how active do I have to be? How mobile do I have to be? Well, we don't do a lot of hiking, but we do require our guests to have good mobility, because we're getting off of our boats. So you should be seeing on your screen now a photo of one of our boats, which has landed at one of our estuaries. This one's with a film crew, but we'll get off the boat into terrain like this, and so we do have people. We do need people to be mobile enough they can get on and off the boats over rocky, uneven terrain. And then we don't travel long distances to the viewing areas. We'll walk through the sedge to a viewing spot and sit. So it's not a question of fitness per se. It's more mobility and just people being, you know, active is kind of the key thing.
Lovely, thank you. So you mentioned there are, what did you say, 3 to 5 night packages?
3 to 6 night.
3 to 6 night packages, awesome. So Jacinta says, Tim, wow, I want to go now. I have clients looking to go to Spirit Bear Lodge next year in September. Is this a good time to travel?
It is an excellent time to travel. Now I'll be frank with the group. We book very, very far in advance, and you know, we've been working really closely with the travel trade now for 7 years, and as the travel trade business has grown, the amount of time that people are booking in advance has increased, and so this has posed a challenge for our Australian market. Our Australian market used to be very, very high, and it's decreased. Our Australian market has decreased, not because of lack of demand, I don't think, but more because of how far people are booking, and so we're getting lots of inquiries from our Australian travel partners in April and May for September when we're sold out, and so that's created some frustration and some challenges, and so, you know, we do really encourage all our partners to, you know, to try and promote it as an early booking thing, because I'll tell you right now, for September 2017, we're completely sold out. We do still have lots of space in August. We have lots of space in October, but September 2017 is 100% sold out. And you know, August is still a great time. In fact, it's the last 2 years have been extraordinary for Spirit Bear, and the Grizzlies, although not there in the numbers that they are in September, are still the viewing opportunities are still quite good. October can be exceptional for grizzly bear viewing. We typically get many grizzlies coming down into the estuaries as the salmon have finished spawning, and so we get morts or dead salmon that the bears are feeding on, so it can bring great numbers of bears down. But often the weather is not quite as good. We get more rain and wind. But yeah, so the further out people can book, really the better.
Great, thank you. I think Jacinta's going to be in touch with you to see what she can organise for next year.
Sure.
Thank you. That was obviously a really important information there about coming in the high season. Judy says, thanks Tim, very interesting, great place for clients to visit. Love the wilderness and the bears. Yeah, absolutely stunning photographs. I love the standing bears. They're always really cool photos of them walking around on 2 feet.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much.